Welcome back to the Chats and Recaps podcast with your host, Sammy.
And Mimi. We're glad you joined us today. So let's get into it.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
And don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you never miss an upload.
These are true stories from the Netflix original docu-series, Jeffrey Epstein, Filthy Rich. The following podcast contains graphic depictions of sexual assault, rape, and discusses suicide. This content may not be suitable for all listeners. Listening discretion is advised.
If you or anyone you know is a victim of sexual assault, you can contact the RAINN National Hotline, that's RAINN, RAINN National Hotline, at 1-800-656-4673, which is available for free 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, or any other local organization which offers assistance at no cost to you.
Today we're discussing the Netflix docuseries on Jeffrey Epstein. This will be our last discussion on a heavy topic like this for a bit after we finish recapping this season, and I'll be gone in the dark, and then we're going to go back to more lighthearted content.
Yeah, it's too much in the dark.
Yeah, we don't want to focus too much on heavy things because obviously we originally started this podcast to be very lighthearted and kind of fun. So we just want to get back to that. The Bachelor's coming back next week, so we're going to have a fun episode. Yay. So looking forward to that. But for today, we are talking about Jeffrey Epstein, Filthy Rich, which, like I said, is a Netflix original docuseries. Apparently, there's also an episode on Hulu on 2020
ABC 2020.
Yeah, ABC 2020 that had an episode about him as well. So that episode was pretty much everything super condensed into one episode. So if you want to see that and you don't want to watch the whole 5-episode series on Netflix, you can do that. Or if you don't want to go through watching 55 minutes of every episode on Netflix, we're going to talk about episode 1 and episode 2 today. And I'm going to go through and pretty much break it down. So I'm going to give you the whole breakdown without you even having to watch it if you haven't. And then if you hear all of this and then you want to go ahead and watch it, then go ahead and do so. So first of all, his full name is Jeffrey Edward Epstein. He was convicted for soliciting prostitution and procuring a minor for said prostitution. During the deposition, he pled the fifth regarding questions about how many locations, where he may have done so, and if it was true or not. So in the beginning, they kind of show the deposition. The only thing that he would own up to was one, that he had been convicted for soliciting prostitution and that he was convicted for procuring a minor, I believe. Everything else, he pled the fifth. So they go into Vicky Ward. Vicky Ward was a reporter for Vanity Fair. She wrote about him in Vanity Fair in 2003. She describes him as a Gatsby-like figure of mystery. He was well socialized with a lot of famous and powerful people and always surrounded himself with beautiful and young women. His girlfriend was a connector for him. She heard stories about 2 girls who were abused and were treated badly by him in the past. He liked to flaunt his wealth and connections to attract his victims to him. He made his victims feel like he had power over them because he was doing something for them. So the first 2 victims they go into in the series is Annie and Maria Farmer. They were the first sisters who, and I don't know if they were the first who were abused by him, but they were the first who reported him to the FBI. Mm-hmm. And Annie and Maria Farmer explained that after they reported him to the FBI, they never heard anything back. They never responded to their report. And they are documented as the first girls who tried to take him down.
Well, the reason they didn't hear anything from the FBI is because he had a lot of people in high places that shut it down.
Right, which they do go on to explain further on. He used his power to threaten the reporter Vicky Ward from writing out against him. Mm-hmm. The girls brought the story to Vicky Ward, again, who was reporter for Vanity Fair. Jeffrey had bought off Vanity Fair. Vanity Fair would not allow it to be published. Vanity Fair released a statement stating, "Miss Ward's reporting on this aspect of her story came in as we were going to press and simply did not meet our legal threshold."
Mm-hmm. Because they were talking about business, not other stuff.
Right.
And then she also went on how she was pregnant at the time for twins, and he pretty much threatened her by saying, "So where are you having these kids? The babies?" Yes. Like, I know all these doctors and hospitals, and she felt threatened and uncomfortable. So he was very strong and influential.
He was. He actually, when he was asking her, like you said, so where you having the babies? And then he said, oh, never mind. I can find out anyway because he's got eyes everywhere. So he said,
like, I know a lot of doctors and hospitals.
Yeah, that was his favorite thing to do. So the last time we were discussing rapists at large in culture back in the 70s. And now we're discussing culture and events which are occurring in the 2000s. The Anna Maria Farmer situation, I believe, happened in the 90s. Epstein had moved to Palm Beach, Florida, which was described as a very wealthy zip code. Mm-hmm. James Patterson was his next door neighbor who talked a little bit about him, about how people would come in and out. Lots of women would come in and out. Also noted a lot of powerful men liked him and trusted him with their money. He was great friends with Donald Trump. Donald Trump stated, quote, I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy. He likes beautiful women as much as I do. Many of them are on the younger side. Obviously, I was not surprised at all by this quote. I mean, let's not forget this is the man who also said, quote, grab him by the bleep, and talked about how beautiful his daughter was in a very disturbing manner. So, not surprised at all these are the people he surrounded himself with. Epstein wanted to make a donation of equipment to the Palm Beach Police Department. When I saw this and noted in the documentary, I immediately thought in my mind, okay, so this is where we're starting to see how he's using influence and money to get access into places, including controlling the police department for his benefit. There was a woman who called because her stepdaughter, who was 14 years old, was paid $300 to go to his home and massage him for money. Mm-hmm. He claimed if they were pretty enough, he would keep them around for other things. An investigation was launched into the situation and was investigated by a special investigations unit due to the nature of the crime and because of the status of Epstein. Joe Recarey was the lead investigator. In the investigator interview, the girl stated she was 17 when he called her to his home. She was required to massage him and remove clothing during the massage as he pleasured himself. At this point, it's extremely clear without a doubt that he's obviously a pedophile. He also raped women, which was briefly shown in an interview. And then they go into Michelle Licata, who was a survivor. A friend introduced her to him by telling her she was making money going to his house to use for Christmas. She was 16 at the time this happened. She went to his home. They were told that if anyone asked to say that they were 18 years old. He talked about how beautiful she was, making her feel flattered by his compliments as a way to manipulate her. He told her to undress to her underwear. She felt she could not just leave, so she did what he told her to do. He pleasured himself yet again while grabbing and touching her. Note, she's obviously a minor. She was 16 years old. And then he paid her $200 and said he wanted to see her again. He literally lured underage girls into his home and treated them like prostitutes, which was disgusting. They go into Shauna Rivera. Shauna Rivera was 14 years old. She shows a little bit of her home. And again, this is another case where a friend brought her over into it about making easy money. Her friend brought her in, had her get undressed with her for the massage, and then her friend walked out and left her in there. He had her do very inappropriate things in the massage, and she stated she went back to him for 3 to 4 years for the money.
Not to mention she was 14 years old and a virgin.
Yes. An investigator trying to reach out to people Epstein employed, he tried to get information for his case on Epstein. A man was describing how he would get massages twice a day, every day, and that it was his job to keep things discreet. The investigators could not get any information out of the employees. They also showed a brief recording. They were trying to speak to another of his employees, trying to get information from him. Mm-hmm. The employee stated that he wasn't going to disclose anything, he didn't want to be involved, and that he was afraid that he would be sued.
Yeah, I guess they have to sign disclosures when they're being employed by him. So,
much.
Another one did speak more than the other one who was afraid.
Yeah,
but when it got to, do you know if these girls that were coming into the home were minors? He was like, that's it. I can't speak anymore.
Yeah, he said it was his job to keep it discreet. Mm-hmm. They then go into Haley Robson. She was actually raped by Jeffrey Epstein. She described how he impacted her and how she turned to drugs and alcohol to cope. She heard again by a friend in school about being paid to massage him. She explained how he had a lot of artwork portraying nudity and photographs of children in his home. He was naked while she was massaging him. He tried to touch her, but she was refusing him and turning him down. He was telling girls if he brought them other girls, he would pay them $200. She stated she recruited 24 girls and she worked for him for 1 year. All of the girls brought were minors under the age of 18. He acted like he cared about them by asking how they were and feigning interest in their lives and well-being. She was told that it was a second-degree felony because she was recruiting girls and bringing them over and assisting with a felony.
Yeah, she complicated herself by saying that she was bringing those girls in.
Yeah, so she started to blame herself. What's interesting to me is they show when she's being interrogated and they're asking her questions, she said that he told her if she brought girls that she would be paid $200. And when
because
she said
she didn't
that,
want to do any sex acts.
Yeah, and when she said that and she talked about the 24 girls she recruited, then they started like harping on her and really coming down on her like, oh, so you assisted him, this is second-degree felony, all this stuff. I'm like, she was a minor, first of all, when it happened.
But here's the thing.
I have mixed feelings.
She was a minor, but she was more mature than the other minors, and she knew that what she was doing was wrong. She knew it. She knew it, but she needed the money, and she did it. And as long as she wasn't doing sexual acts for him, all she was doing was bringing in the kids to him for them to perform the sexual acts on him. And then she got paid $200, and she sat out at the pool feeling bad because she knew what was going on in there, because she knew that he was trying to do it to her. But because she stopped him, she was more mature than the other girls mentally. But she was more, and she admitted it herself. She was lured in for the money.
She needed the money. Was forced to perform sexual acts as well, though. So that's not true.
No, not his right-hand man. She didn't do this. All she did was bring in the girls.
This is not the right-hand man. This is a different victim, Haley Robson.
She was considered.
She was lured in by a friend. Another girl recruited her.
Right.
And then she recruited 24 girls.
Correct.
She's the one. She said she was sitting by the pool and that's the one. Whatever. She was forced to do sexual acts.
No,
she was raped by him. She stated that she was raped by him in the beginning.
No. She stated that she was raped by someone else. She already knew what that was about because she was raped by a 21-year-old guy who then, when she was introduced and brought to that place, when he started touching her down there, she started to reenact the rape that she went through at the age of 21, and she told him to stop. She's not going to do that. It's not going to happen. And then he said, well, if you bring me girls, I'll still pay you $200 and you won't have to do anything. So she started recruiting girls. That's what she did. She started recruiting the girls and bringing them into him, and she sat out at the pool. She never performed any acts. That's why they said, now you're his right-hand guy who was bringing in the girls, getting paid the $200. You knew what was happening to them in there. Some were as young as 14 years old. And that's why they were going after her for felony. Because technically, she wasn't a victim. She was not raped by him. She clearly told him no.
You can't say that's still molestation.
I'm not saying
that still makes her a victim.
I'm not saying that. I'm not personally saying. The DA personally was saying, okay, so technically you were not. That's why they were going to press charges against her. Because she didn't have to perform sex acts. She stopped him. And then he was like, well, I can continue to give you $200. Just bring me the girls. And that's what she did. And she brought in 24 girls to him. And then she got mad because she said, well, why would you be charging me? What about the girl who bought me, or the girl before her that brought her that then brought me? But she was raped by a 21-year-old guy.
Well, we're just gonna have to agree to disagree on this one. No, I'm reading it. You were right about that. She wasn't raped by him. She was a rape victim previously of something else. But I'm saying we're gonna have to agree to disagree. I think obviously it was wrong.
I'm not saying it's not wrong.
No, what I'm saying is I don't think it's fair that they began attacking her and when she was saying what she was doing.
Right. But what I'm saying is I can see how they kind of attacked her.
They shouldn't have done that, in my opinion.
They shouldn't have, but I can see kind of why. Because
Like,
when she stopped him, she knew it was wrong. The other girls didn't know. If you listen to the other girls,
you know who knew it was wrong?
You
know who knew it was wrong? Epstein, the adult. She was a child.
I know that. I know he's the pervert of all of it. The difference between her and why they were going after her was because when they interviewed the other girls were like, they didn't know what to do. They didn't say no because they didn't know they could say no. So they didn't know. They went along with it. Where she stood her ground and she was like, no, is not. And she even said it. She's like, I told him no, it is not happening and it's never gonna happen. And that's when he proposed to her. Fine. Okay. How about I give you $200 and you just bring me girls? And then she was like, okay, I'll do that. I can bring you girls because I need the money.
So he manipulated girls he knew were needing certain things in their life, primarily money, to help them get out of their circumstances. The first episode ended with them talking about obtaining a search warrant for his home and that they were shocked by what they found.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until 7 months into the case that they had executed a search warrant on his property. At the end of the episode, it stated that Ghislaine Maxwell was denying all allegations against her. Statements from the attorneys for the New York Academy of Art and Aileen Guggenheim state Maria Farmer's claims against Aileen Guggenheim are inconsistent with her sworn testimony and filings in 2 federal court actions, in which Farmer states that she herself negotiated the sale of a painting to Epstein, and that she did so because Epstein offered to help her with her career in both federal court actions. Farmer makes no mention of Guggenheim. Aileen Guggenheim categorically states that she had no role whatsoever in either Farmer's introduction to Epstein or the sale of her artwork. And I think I skipped over this in the beginning when I was talking about Maria and Annie Farmer. So Maria was a painter. She was drawn out there because she was selling her art in an exhibition. Her art was being sold. In the documentary, she claims that there was a couple that was going to buy her art for $12,000. She stated that Aileen Guggenheim came up to her and told her that she was not going to sell the art to that couple, to tell them that they were not going to be buying the art and that it was already sold, and that she would be selling it to Epstein for half the price.
Yep.
So she stated that this happened because he was a very big, important person. She wanted the art to be sold to him instead and to trust her because it would basically help further her career. She was then introduced to Epstein, allegedly, from what she said in the documentary, was introduced to Epstein, who then offered that he was going to help her with her career and to come out to his ranch in Texas, I believe it was. So she invited him out to her property, where she went out to his property. She had a couple of paintings there. She stated that she was painting pictures of like her sisters that showed them nude.
Yes, nude and half nude.
And that he stole the photos.
Yeah, and one of her sisters was 12 years old. Why would she do that?
I don't know why she would paint it anyway, but anyway, he stole the art. And I feel like it's alluded that maybe that was some of the art that was hanging in his home. Could have been. So that was the statement from the attorneys of New York on behalf of Aileen Guggenheim in regards to that. There's an additional statement from Graydon Carter. He said, during my 25 years at Vanity Fair, we were steadfast in our legal review on every story. Miss Ward's reporting on this aspect of her story came in as we were going to press and simply did not meet our legal threshold. Furthermore, her recounting of the facts around the Epstein article is completely accurate. If we had 3 people on the record willing to stand up for us in court if Epstein had chosen to sue, we would have run it.
So they didn't have enough.
This is what confused. I was like, this statement is a little bit confusing to me. So I'm like, they're saying they cannot run the article because 3 people were not on the record to stand up for them in the court. So 2 victims is not enough.
It was. I don't think she's talking about the victims. I think she's talking about the people that work in the news, with the magazine Vanity Fair. Because if they can't have 3 people standing up to make sure that these stories are true, then it'll never stand up in court, and he could have shut down that magazine. The story
only happened to 2 people. There's only 2 victims to tell the story, and Jeffrey himself.
Right.
So
that's why they had to shut it down.
So basically, the 2 girls' stories are like negated at this point. Oh, there's just not enough of you. Whether there's 1 victim or 100 victims, why does it matter?
He's a powerful man.
So that's why I'm like, this doesn't make any sense to me. But I said, maybe I'm just dense in this area. I'm not a law major or anything, clearly. So I don't know if there's other background to this. Because to me, it sounds like, oh, they need at least 3 people. So you're waiting for him to have a 3rd victim and then those 3 people can stand against him in court. Doesn't make sense to me.
I guess that's the threshold for putting a story out, because you're actually writing about the character of a person. You're putting it on print and you're selling it. So, I mean, when you're going after someone's character without a police report, without any, investigation.
There was a police report. They reported to the FBI.
But that wasn't even out there. It was held. I guess they were just getting some facts together, because even the police departments was fighting against the FBI, and there was so many people covering for him than there were not covering for him. So the investigation was hard. Now, a big magazine like Vanity Fair, they put that story out there. Do you know the lawsuit? That's why they didn't do it.
Yeah,
they were probably like, give me more true
they're
stories.
More worried about themselves.
Give me a whole bunch of true stories, and then we'll go ahead and run with it. Because that's gonna launch an even bigger investigation.
Yeah, that's what episode 1 ended with. Now, episode 2, it starts back up with a search warrant and that they're searching the premises. They found a lot of nude artwork, especially depicting young kids. They called it weird. I call it predatory behavior.
Yeah.
So again, when they mentioned earlier in the series how he had made this large donation of equipment to the police department, in my head, I was like, oh, like I said, this is his in, if anything happens, that, he has someone on the inside to help him. And sure enough, he knew they were coming, so he had removed the evidence. Epstein was tipped off about them coming to search his home. And
because when they came to search his home, they noticed there was a whole bunch of wires and missing equipment. So they knew he got tipped and he got rid of everything.
Now, they did say he removed a lot of evidence. However, the underage girl depictions of the home was exactly what they found when they searched the home. Yeah. So pretty much exactly what every girl was describing the home to them as is exactly what they saw when they entered the home.
And another thing they found was an appointment book. Like, really, you get rid of all the equipment and everything, but you don't get rid of the appointment book? Just sitting there?
That didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, that one was talking about how young the girls were and how they were in school and they were making appointments. Oh, she can be here at 4 because she's in school. She's got to stay in school until 2:30, blah, blah, blah. I was thinking it was like a whole thick book of appointments. It was like one big old pyramid scheme.
So then we go into October 2005. They discovered that this was going on for many years before they even began investigating. And when they were reaching out to speak to the girls, some of the girls were stating that they were in love with him and that they were going to get married.
Married? Really?
Yeah, so that's pretty disturbing. Although it's not uncommon that in situations with victims where like that Stockholm syndrome happens, and they start to fall in love with the perpetrator.
That's very true.
So it does happen. It wasn't something that shocked me. It's almost a little bit expected when you're in things that happen like this. So Virginia, they talk about Mar-a-Lago, which is the Trump estate in Palm Beach, Florida as well.
She was 16.
Her name was Virginia. She was 16 years old. She got a job there as a locker room attendant in the spa area. And that is where she had the unfortunate displeasure to meet Ghislaine Maxwell. So Virginia really wanted to become a massage therapist. Ghislaine Maxwell started to express interest in her for her desire to be in massage therapy. She told her that there was a man looking for a traveling massage therapist. Ghislaine answered the door at the mansion, which she
invited the girl to come over to the mansion the next day?
Correct.
So when she got there and rang the doorbell, it was
Ghislaine who answered the door at the mansion. She was brought into a massage room where he was waiting for her on the bed, face down, naked. She had her massage him with her. So Ghislaine had Virginia massaging him, and they were massaging him together.
After telling her to take off her clothes.
So they asked her questions about her life. She told them how much this opportunity meant to her. And that's when he turned over and they told her to remove her clothing. And Ghislaine also removed her clothing as well. Ghislaine began to touch her inappropriately and forced her to get on top of him. After all of this was over, they told her that the interview went well and asked her to come back, and she did. She explained why she was the perfect victim, which is heartbreaking to hear. She was basically like a slave to his desires. He made her feel like she was going to get so much out of the abusive relationship she developed with him. She did not think her life would be better without him, so she stood. They then sex trafficked her to a lot of powerful people in his social group, which she doesn't state who any of the people are, just that a lot of them were celebrities, politicians, and things like that. He said he owned the Palm Beach Police Department, and he thought he was above the law. So they go into a little bit of background on Epstein. He was raised in Coney Island, New York. He was in college for only 2 years and studied physics. He got a job teaching at Dalton without a college degree, which started his pattern of thinking he could get away with things that other people could not. And I was like, the privilege, holy moly, how did he do it? I really want to know. Michael Tenenbaum states that he hired him for his company and was impressed by his abilities. He was then told that he lied about his college degree. He said he was prepared to fire him. So when Michael Tenenbaum confronted him, he admitted immediately to lying and told a story about why he did it to get the opportunity. It shows how he is a manipulator early on. Apparently, that's what made him such a good salesperson. Like, everybody knows that salesperson that tries to convince you to buy something you don't need. And then if you're someone who's like weak-minded or easily manipulated, you find yourself buying something, you're like, what the heck? How did this person convince me to get that? Like, I came in here with no desire to buy this, and then somehow you get convinced into buying it. That's called the charming manipulator. And he was clearly a master of this. So they go back a little bit into the investigation that was going on. Barry Krischer talks. He explains how Epstein was able to put together a top-tier team of 8 attorneys and lawyers to defend him through his connections. Alan Dershowitz, who was a top defense attorney, defended a lot of high-profile name cases like O.J. Simpson. He was not able to defend Jeffrey Epstein, but he did help him put together a team that could. Going into the investigation, they start showing how Jeffrey was having the detectives followed and monitored. I'm like, imagine that. Like, he turns the investigation against them and starts having a team of private investigators going out, watching their every move, recording them, looking through their trash, all kinds of stuff.
Yep, even the FBI.
Yeah. They really tried to say that, wait, I kind of talked about this with no context. So when they were talking about the case and what the defense team was doing as like a counterattack to the prosecution, they were basically trying to say that because they were paid, that it meant that they consented. And I was like, as if a minor, first of all, a minor can't even consent, but apparently, like they said, that didn't mean anything to the defense team. They were just like, well, they accepted money, so they consented to it. And then they said,
there's no consension.
Then they tried to say, oh, he didn't know they were underage. They were telling him that they were 18 and over and that they were presenting false identification.
Meanwhile, his address book and appointment book is showing that they were all minors.
Right? So in July 2006, Epstein is charged with a single felony count of solicitation of prostitution. Basically, they had to bring it down to solicitation of prostitution because everything else they were trying to do accounts against him of minors and molestation and things like that, they were like knocking down, which I don't know how they did, but apparently they did. He was arrested and posted bond a few hours later. He had a team of defense attorneys who attacked the girls and victims, trying to tear apart their credibility. Like, I understand it's their job, but I could never do things or say things like that to help a pedophile and a rapist. What's worse? Like they said to one of the girls, what's worse, 3 abortions or giving sexual massages to Jeffrey Epstein?
That's disgusting.
Like, who says that to a person?
Defense attorneys, that's all.
Disgusting. They're constantly threatening people and places not to release stories against him. Michael Ryder wrote the families to tell them that he did not feel justice was sufficiently served, and he took the case to the FBI to be investigated. Because again, remember, they tried to get him on counts of a lot of things. The defense team was finding ways to shut it down, and it got him to a very small prison sentence, which he ended up posting bail for. So Michael Ryder deservedly was like, no, this isn't right. How can he get away with this? And took it to the FBI. So the FBI took over the case in July of 2006. The FBI found 2 women who had accused him a decade earlier. So we go back to Annie and Maria Farmer. Maria was told all her artwork would get destroyed and was threatened that she would be killed. Ghislaine would call with threats consistently. Maria expressed she moved many times and was hiding and had to change her name. The FBI managed to find her in 2006, stating that they wanted to get him. Shauna Rivera also was contacted by the FBI in 2006. FBI was reaching out pretty much to as many past victims as they could at this point. Separate from the criminal investigation, several victims filed civil lawsuits seeking monetary compensation from Epstein. Courtney Wild is another victim. When she was 14, she was introduced to Epstein, said she was pretty much homeless. She was again recruited to give him a massage for money, and he molested her. She continued to go back to him, and she said he made her feel like she was lucky to be in his presence.
Yes.
The second or third time she visited, he offered the $200 deal to bring him additional girls. She recruited 40 to 60 girls.
Wow.
She said she needed the money to pay bills, and she stated that he was like a lifeline to her. She viewed him as an awesome man who she was so lucky to meet because of the financial security he gave her until she saw the stories of the girls whom she took to him.
Wow. So she didn't think they were doing the same thing?
I guess not. She said that she didn't really think what she was doing was wrong until she saw the stories of all the other girls. They presented to her, I guess, all the stories of the girls whom she had recruited. And then she was like, oh my God,
that's insane.
I can't believe that I did this. So then they go into Brad Edwards. He describes how he basically set up a pyramid molestation scheme. How it's crazy he was able to do it for so long, so successfully. Ghislaine Maxwell, they basically laid out like a giant pyramid showing every girl.
Showing him in the middle, and then the first girl, the second girl, the third,
and all the girls that were recorded.
Just kept going on,
and
like a web.
They said it made like a huge spider web.
Yes.
Ghislaine Maxwell was one of the biggest recruiters for him. She was essentially his right-hand man and started the pyramid scheme.
Yep.
She's described as someone who's charismatic and bubbly. She found Jeffrey Epstein as a replacement for her father, who was widely successful in England as the publisher of a magazine. So basically, her father was very successful in England as the publisher. I don't know if they said what the magazine was, but some big magazine in England. And then I guess some things happened. He ended up passing away. And so Jeffrey Epstein was, I guess, the perfect replacement for her father.
Father figure.
Yeah. Then they go into Stephen Hoffenberg. Stephen Hoffenberg stated he felt like he was responsible for him getting so successful and for what happened to all those girls. He was the CEO of an organization. He employed Epstein. And Epstein appealed to him because he was running a Ponzi scheme. So a Ponzi scheme, just so you know, Stephen Hoffenberg's $460 million Ponzi scheme was using false financial statements to exaggerate the value of his company and lure new investors. So obviously, Epstein was essentially a con artist, so all of his qualities really appealed to them. They described meeting him and said he was very charming, that he's able to take charge of the interview. And again, he was displayed his manipulative qualities. So naturally, they saw him as a great addition to their company. He was really great and a mastermind behind the schemes and falsifying information, and described as a master manipulator. Then they go into Leslie Wexner. Leslie Wexner is a multi-billionaire who owned Victoria's Secret, Abercrombie & Fitch, and established the company The Limited. He had Epstein take over his finances, and this was an extent to show how great he was at being charming and controlling people, as everybody described Leslie as someone who was impossible to be able to give up control of anything, especially his finances. Epstein explained how he planned to manipulate him to gain access to his assets to use for his financial gain. Between 1991 and 2006, Epstein oversaw the sale of more than $1.3 billion of stock from Wexner's company, The Limited. Wexner explained he cut ties with him in 2007 due to Epstein stealing $46 million. But for some reason, he did not decide to sue him or go after him or seek any legal action.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit earlier. Like, why would he not seek legal action on someone who stole 46, was it billion or million? 46 million. Sorry, $46 million from him. And he chose not to sue.
Yeah, something's going on there.
Definitely. Epstein also used his relationship with Lex Wexner to approach young women. He often claimed that he was a talent scout for Victoria's Secret. So we go into another victim, Alicia Arden. She was a model. She was told that Epstein could get her into the Victoria's Secret catalog. He told her to get into her underwear and inappropriately touched her body. She went immediately to the police department to report him, and he was never investigated, and they never followed up with her.
Wow.
Then they Then they also go into Mike Feinstein. He worked very closely with the FBI. He did a lot of footwork for finding leads and girls that he had assaulted. He found 46 girls and was able to pass the information to the FBI. So kudos to him.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, it's clear that Epstein was controlling people with fear. A lot of his victims just said they were afraid to even speak out against him. And again, Epstein had private investigators that were starting to watch Brad and his family. He attempted to intimidate Brad to not stand for his victims and looking for things to blackmail him with.
Yeah, that's all he knows how to do.
Yep. One of the victims, Shauna, actually had to be hid by the police because she was being harassed by Epstein's private investigators. Government had a lot of information against Epstein, including the victims and evidence of tracking. So they did talk about
trafficking.
Yeah, isn't that what I said?
Tracking.
Oh, and evidence of trafficking. So they talk about how they knew the government had like pages and pages and documents and proof and photos and this and that and the other against him. And they're sitting here wondering, why aren't they doing anything about it? Like, they have all this information. What are they waiting for? So they were like, oh, maybe they're just waiting for the perfect time to get them. Moving on, May 2008. The case was with the federal government for 2 years, and they had not heard anything back. When asked when the trial would start, and he was told there was information that he could not get. Brad saw a red flag that something was wrong. FBI was also then told they could not talk to the police department about any details. Red flags were raised for everyone at this point that something was definitely going on. They briefly, yeah, absolutely. They briefly explained that the U.S. Attorney Acosta met with Epstein's lawyers, and the next thing they knew, the case was completely dropped.
And no indictment.
And no indictment. So Alexander, at the end of the episode, they have a statement that says Alexander Acosta has maintained his actions in the Epstein case were appropriate. Former Palm Beach County State Attorney Barry Krischer declined multiple requests for an interview. And obviously, again, Ghislaine Maxwell denies all allegations against her.
And if I'm not mistaken, she's still doing that today. So,
of course she is.
I don't know.
So that was pretty much the recap of everything that was discussed in episodes 1 and 2 of Jeffrey Epstein, Filthy Rich. Obviously, there are still 3 more episodes to the series. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch episodes, what would it be? We watch 1 and 2, so it'd be 3, 4, and 5. Maybe we'll just watch 3, 4, and 5 and do a recap on all 3 at once.
Yeah.
Because I feel like on this one, we kind of just like breezed through all of the major points that were made throughout the episodes. This is a more recent case because, as we read, he had been arrested in July of 2019.
Correct.
Which is like insane that this case was going on in the 2000s, and it took over 10 years for this man to be put behind bars.
Especially in the 2000s where, you know, DNA, all this new technology and stuff was already in advance. I can understand in cases like back in the 70s and 80s and early 90s. But 2000s, come on, to let this case run for 10 decades, that's insane. It's insane.
10 years, yeah. It's
I
funny.
said 10 decades.
Yeah, I was like, not quite. That's 100 years.
One decade.
Yeah. It's
Just
funny
one
because
decade.
it's funny because when we were talking in the last episode, and we were discussing, you know, how different things were in the 70s and all that, and why victims didn't want to come out, and now we're talking about a case that literally we just pretty much saw justice happen in 2019. These cases were happening in the 90s, all throughout the 90s to pretty much probably until he was put behind bars.
From 95.
It took that long to put a guy away who had one of the largest amounts of victims you may have ever seen. And it took this long still to put him behind bars.
And all minors.
And
So
that's
they're all
why,
kids.
yeah, and that's why I was saying in the last episode, and I'm still saying, you know, that even though, yes, there has been a lot of progress made since the 70s, there's still a lot of progress to be made.
Well, the reason that there were so many victims is because he manipulated all these girls that came into him. He manipulated them to get more girls. And of course, they had access to these girls because they were girls. They were young girls, kids, going to school, recruiting more kids, and so on and so on. That's why it was so many victims. Because even though he was doing perverted things, he was also making them feel good. He was giving them money. He was making them feel secure. He was he was doing all these things, masterminding their mind, manipulating their minds into thinking this is safe. And all we're doing is just one little simple thing to make him happy. And, we have security. We have money. We have somewhere to come. He takes us places. It's sick. It's
crazy.
Sick.
It really is.
It was so sick that my stomach was turning watching these 2 episodes.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know if I can do all 5.
Right.
It's not healthy for me either because my blood pressure was going up and I was getting so pissed. I was getting so angry that all of this can happen. And it makes me want to just shake all these young girls and boys and say, you're worth more than that. Like, it's like, we have to teach our kids from the time that they're young, that they're important, that they're worth something, that, they can't just sell themselves and they can't sell themselves short. And that's how these manipulators will stop. Because if you raise a strong child, then you raise a strong country. Our kids are getting lost. We're not paying enough attention to them. We're not talking enough to them. We're not, telling them how important they are, how beautiful they are, how smart they are, how important they are, and we're losing kids. We're losing them. Because these manipulators and these pedophiles are telling them what they need to hear. And that needs to start from home. It really does. And it's sad. It's sad that these manipulators can get away with doing that.
That was deep.
Sorry, it just hits me, It's like,
true. It's true. It's true.
Oh my gosh.
Because you hear a lot of the stories, like the ones where
I just wish I can get into the mind of every single kid and manipulate their minds to
in a good way.
In a good way to like show them, no, you're not doing this to me, and I'm telling,
Yeah.
And if nobody does nothing to you, I'm gonna keep telling and screaming until somebody does. But they don't have a voice. We need to give them voice.
I agree. We're going to take some time out as well. Now that we're here at the end of the episode, we want to bring some light to some organizations. First of all, with the past 2 episodes that we've had where we were talking, last episode we talked about I'll Be Gone in the Dark. This episode we're talking about Jeffrey Epstein. Both of them are covering similar topics. Very similar, not identical, but in the core root being sexual assault.
Mm-hmm.
And so first I want to bring light to an organization called RAINN, RAINN. We mentioned it in the beginning of the video. And RAINN has a national hotline, which is 1-800-656-4673 or 1-800-656-HOPE. It's a free hotline that is operated by RAINN, which is available to anyone in the nation 24 hours, 7 days a week. It's a national sexual assault hotline. RAINN stands for Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. It's the nation's largest anti-sexual violence organization. RAINN created and operates the National Sexual Assault Hotline, which I just went over, in partnership with more than 1,000 local sexual assault service providers across the country, and operates the DoD Safe Helpline for the Department of Defense. RAINN also carries out programs to prevent sexual violence, help survivors, and ensure that perpetrators are brought to justice. In 25 years, RAINN has helped 3 million survivors and their loved ones. So I just wanted to bring some light to that. We currently have a GoFundMe going for this, so we're going to link it in the description so that if you feel so inclined out of the goodness of your heart and you want to go ahead and donate to them, Obviously, it's a wonderful organization that is helping a lot of people. So if you want to donate, we're going to put the link in the description to the GoFundMe that we have going for RAINN. And then there's one more charity that we want to talk about as well while we're at it, especially one that's making a huge difference right now with COVID-19 and a lot of struggles that are happening across the globe and in the US. And it's called Feed the Children. And I'll let you talk about that one because this is one that you are passionate about.
Well, yeah, they focus a lot on the kids in the United States, and they're also going out globally, where all your donations, majority of the donations go straight to feeding these kids. That's a charity I've been giving to for like 10 years now. And that's a charity that I believe in, and that's a charity I will never stop giving to. But now I have another one to give to, RAINN. I'm always trying to look for new charities to give to. And as long as most of the proceeds are going towards the donations are going more towards
to the cause,
those are the ones that I would pick more and give to.
Yes. Also, if you're wanting to know, for RAINN, out of every dollar, 95 cents goes directly to their cause. So obviously that's like
percentage.
95%.
Yes.
That means 95% of the donations are going directly to the cause. And the other 5% is basically just to keep the organization up and running. They operate on volunteer work and things like that. It's a nonprofit, or both of these are nonprofit organizations that operate primarily off of volunteer work.
Those are the kind of organizations that I like to give my money to because I know that it's going into work.
Exactly. So you can feel confident with your donation that it's going to be going directly to a cause.
And I also want to say, when you're giving money, I mean, you can't be everywhere at the same time. So these charities is letting you being able to be that voice. You know, you might not be able to get in there and volunteer or be there and, but you're able to give money, which is allowing other people to be there in your place.
Yes.
And remember, when you see things that are strange, if something inside of you is telling you, that doesn't look right. What are all those young girls doing going in and out of the house, or all these young guys going in and out of the house? Be their voice, because you don't know what's going on. And so what if somebody feels embarrassed that you call the cops on them? Hey, there's a lot of trafficking of kids coming in and out that house. Like, what's going on? Be that voice. Because I'd rather embarrass somebody and they do an investigation than to find out 10 years later that I was living next door to a pedophile and all these kids was coming in and out being abused. So.
And also from the Feed the Children, just know that each dollar donated will provide $7 worth of food and essentials that they're working tirelessly to get into the hands of the most vulnerable. So again, thank you guys for tuning in. Like I said, the link to donate to both of these charities is going to be provided in our description if you're interested in donating your money to either of those charities. Thank you again for listening to us. We hope that you're all staying safe, happy, and healthy, and manifesting everything that you desire out of life. And don't forget to tune in next week, Wednesday, because we're going to have a fun, lighthearted episode recap of The Bachelor.
Yes. Amen.
So we can dig into Brad Womack.
Amen.
I'm really interested to see what happens there.
Yeah. Can't wait. Be blessed.